A kingdom born from a brother's betrayal on a hilltop above a swamp, a republic that conquered the known world, an empire of 1 million souls that collapsed into silence. This is Rome, 28 centuries of power, faith, destruction and reinvention on the same 7 hills above the Tiber. Before we begin, the visuals in this video are built using artificial intelligence, combined with historical paintings, engravings and photographs. They are based on research, not imagination, but they are approximations, not perfect recreations. Some details may not be exactly right. Our goal is to bring the past to life, as vividly and honestly as we can. This is the story of the city that shaped the Western world, from a Bronze Age village to the capital of an empire, from a medieval ruin to a living monument. This is Rome rebuilt. Legend says Rome began with violence. Twin brothers, Romulus and Remus, raised by a she-wolf on the banks of the Tiber. They argued over where to build their city. Romulus killed Remus and founded Rome on the Palatine Hill. The traditional date is 753 BC. The legend is myth. But the archaeology is real. By the 8th century BC, small settlements of farmers and shepherds had appeared on the hills above the Tiber. The river was shallow enough to cross at this point, a natural meeting place for trade between the Etruscans to the north and the Greek colonies to the south. What began as a cluster of mud huts on a swampy riverbank slowly became a town. For more than 2 centuries, Rome was ruled by kings. According to tradition, there were 7, beginning with Romulus and ending with Tarquinius Superbus. Under the kings, Rome built its first temples, its first walls, and its first sewer, the Cloaca Maxima, which still runs beneath the city today. But around 509 BC, the Romans overthrew their last king. What came next was not a kingdom. They called it res publica, the public thing, the Commonwealth, a state that belonged not to a king, but to its people. Rome elected 2 consuls each year, advised by a senate of elders. Power was shared, debated, fought over. It was imperfect, brutal at times, but it worked. And it expanded. By the 3rd century BC, Rome controlled most of the Italian peninsula. Then came the wars that would define the Republic. Rome fought Carthage 3 times across more than a century. In the Second Punic War, the Carthaginian general Hannibal crossed the Alps with war elephants and nearly destroyed Rome itself. He won battle after battle for 15 years on Italian soil, but Rome endured and Carthage was eventually defeated. With Carthage gone, Rome turned east and west. Greece fell, Spain fell, southern Gaul fell. By the 1st century BC, Rome controlled the entire Mediterranean, what they called Mare Nostrum, our sea. But the Republic was breaking apart from within. Generals with private armies fought for control. The last of them was Julius Caesar, who crossed the Rubicon in 49 BC and seized power. He was murdered 5 years later. But the Republic was already over. What came next was an empire. In 27 BC, Caesar's adopted son Octavian became Augustus, the first emperor. He did not call himself king. He kept the language of the Republic, the Senate, the consuls, but the power was his. Under Augustus, Rome was transformed. Marble replaced brick. Temples, forums, and public baths rose across the city. Augustus reportedly said he found Rome a city of brick and left it a city of marble. The population reached 1 million, the largest city the world had ever seen. For nearly 2 centuries after Augustus, the empire grew and consolidated. At its height under Trajan, around 117 AD, Rome controlled territory from Britain to Mesopotamia, from the Rhine to the Sahara. Approximately 60 million people lived under Roman law. 11 aqueducts delivered roughly 1 billion litres of water to the capital every day, more per person than most modern cities provide today. This was the age of the Pax Romana, the Roman peace, nearly 2 centuries of relative stability that allowed trade, culture and architecture to flourish across 3 continents. It reached its last great moment under Marcus Aurelius. When he died in 180 AD, everything changed. The death of Marcus Aurelius in 180 AD is often seen as the beginning of Rome's long decline. What followed was not a sudden collapse, but a slow unravelling across nearly 3 centuries. Civil wars, military revolts, plagues and economic crisis weakened the empire from within. Invasions pressed from every frontier. Rome had already lost its role as the centre of power. In 286 AD, the Emperor Diocletian moved the western capital to Milan. In 330, Constantine founded a new eastern capital, Constantinople. And in 402, as barbarian armies threatened northern Italy, the Emperor Honorius moved his court again, this time to Ravenna, a city protected by marshes on the Adriatic coast. Rome itself remained a great city, still home to hundreds of thousands, but its political power was gone. In 410 AD, Visigoth forces entered Rome and took the city, the first time in 800 years that a foreign army had breached its walls. In 455, the Vandals did the same, and in 476 AD, a Germanic general named Odoacer removed the last Western emperor, a boy called Romulus Augustulus, and sent the imperial insignia to Constantinople. The forums fell silent. The aqueducts broke. The empire was over. Within a generation, Rome was unrecognizable. The population fell to perhaps 30,000. The great buildings were stripped for stone and metal. The Forum, once the centre of the world, was buried under centuries of debris. Locals called it Campo Vaccino, the cowfield. But Rome did not die. The church survived the collapse of the empire, and the papacy slowly became the city's government, economy, and identity. Pope Gregory the Great, who led the church from 590 to 604, organized the defense of Rome, fed its people, and negotiated with the invaders. The Pope became what the emperor had been. On Christmas Day in the year 800, Pope Leo III placed a crown on the head of Charlemagne, king of the Franks, inside the old Basilica of St. Peter. It was a symbolic resurrection, Rome's universal authority reborn through the Church. For the next 5 centuries, popes crowned emperors, fought emperors, and excommunicated emperors. Rome's power was no longer military. It was spiritual and political, built on faith, tradition, and the memory of an empire that still cast its shadow over Europe. By the 15th century, a new ambition was taking shape. Rome would be rebuilt, not by emperors, but by popes. In the 15th century, a series of ambitious popes set out to transform Rome into the greatest city in Christendom. They hired the finest artists and architects in Italy. Michelangelo painted the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel between 1508 and 1512. Bramante began the construction of the new St. Peter's Basilica in 1506. Raphael decorated the papal apartments with scenes of philosophy and theology. Rome was being rebuilt as a capital worthy of its ancient past. Then came disaster. In May 1527, unpaid soldiers of the Holy Roman Emperor stormed the city. The Pope took refuge in Castel Sant'Angelo and eventually surrendered. The occupation lasted months. Nearly half the population was lost, through violence, disease, or flight. It was one of the most devastating events in Rome's long history, and it effectively ended the High Renaissance in Italy. But Rome recovered. The Church responded to crisis with a vast program of rebuilding, not just physical, but spiritual. The Counter-Reformation transformed Rome once again. A city rebuilt not in triumph, but in response to trauma. What emerged was something entirely new. Facing the challenge of Protestantism, the Catholic Church used art and architecture as instruments of faith. The Council of Trent, which met between 1545 and 1563, redefined church doctrine. Rome became the stage on which this renewed faith was performed. No one shaped that stage more than Gian Lorenzo Bernini. Over the course of 50 years, Bernini transformed the city. He designed the great colonnade at St. Peter's Square, carved sculptures that seemed to breathe, and built fountains that turned public spaces into theatre. His rival, Francesco Borromini, pushed architecture in radical new directions: curved walls, impossible geometry, buildings that seemed alive. Together they created the Rome that visitors still see today. Domes rose across the skyline. Grand avenues were cut through medieval streets. Churches were designed not just for worship, but to overwhelm. Every piazza, every fountain, every facade was calculated to inspire awe in the pilgrims who came from across Europe. By the 18th century, the transformation was complete. The city of fountains and golden light on travertine, that is largely the Rome that was built in this period. A city of faith. But the age of faith was ending. The 19th century brought revolution. Across Italy, a movement called the Risorgimento, the Resurgence, fought to unify the peninsula into a single nation. Rome, still ruled by the Pope, was the ultimate prize. On the 20th of September 1870, Italian troops breached the walls at Porta Pia and entered the city. More than 1,000 years of papal rule came to an end. Rome became the capital of the new Kingdom of Italy in 1871. The Pope declared himself a prisoner in the Vatican and refused to recognize the new state. The 20th century reshaped the city again. Under fascism, wide boulevards were carved through ancient neighborhoods. Monumental buildings rose on the outskirts, including the EUR district, designed for a world exposition in 1942 that was never held. Then came war. Rome was declared an open city in August 1943 to spare it from bombing. It was occupied by foreign forces the following month. Liberation came on the 4th of June 1944. The age of empires was over, but Rome endured. In 1946, Italy became a republic. Rome entered a new era, one defined not by conquest or faith, but by culture and memory. In the 1950s and 1960s, Rome became a symbol of style and freedom. Filmmakers used its streets as sets. The phrase La Dolce Vita became shorthand for a city that had learned to live beautifully. Today, Rome is home to approximately 2.8 million people. Tens of millions of visitors walk its streets every year. The past is both the city's greatest attraction and its greatest challenge. Construction of the metro is constantly interrupted by archaeology. Ancient foundations lie beneath modern buildings. Traffic and pollution slowly damage monuments that have survived millennia. But that is Rome, a city that has been a kingdom, a republic, an empire, a ruin, a theocracy, a capital, and an occupied city. It has been taken, abandoned, rebuilt, and reinvented more times than any city on earth. And it endures. 28 centuries after two brothers fought over a hilltop above the Tiber, Rome is still here, still standing, still unfinished.